All right, so we are at Cannagather LA. I'm here with the man himself, Dan Herrera. A lot of you probably know about Jack Herrera and probably a lot of your favorite strains, right? But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the company before we ask you some more in-depth questions?
All right, well, my name is Dan Herrera. I started a company that represented what my father had left me and my family after his passing in 2010. Most people, most of the younger generations know the name Jack Herrera, and they relate it to a strain. But the reality is my father was an educator and a writer and an advocate, and through his activism and his advocacy, he wrote a book called The Emperor Wears No Clothes that inspired a great many Americans around this country and even folks around the world to find their voice, to stand up in their community and to demand access to this plant and to be able to build reasonable, reliable, community building companies. And since then, the cannabis community has been built around that, and that's what our product and our company is based on, is that legacy and what it represents, not just the flower that we produce, but the community that we all represent.
All right, so you mentioned, activism and being part of the, being part of the conversation, and that's one thing that your father's really, pushed and moved forward. But I see that a lot in yourself as well. We were talking earlier about, what the conversation that you're trying to move forward. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, on two fronts. One, we have for the first time in history the ability to develop a new commodity, a new industry based on our beliefs and our love for this plant. And through that, we have the opportunity to work as from business to business and as a community in a wholly different way than that of just merger and acquisition or takeover or control. We have the ability to share a space and build it together that just doesn't build what's happening here in Santa Monica or Los Angeles or California or the United States. This community has become global. On the other side of this, we have the misunderstanding of what it is that we are building. Everything right now that we're building our companies on are still based in the lies and deception and misinformation that created prohibition to begin with. So even now, our regulations and everything that requires us to operate as a company or as a business is all predicated on those same lies. It is now becoming the cracked foundation for what we're building it on, instead of a solid foundation built on truth and understanding and facts. And we really need to stop having to fight to stay alive and really work on not only how we survive in the future, but how we thrive in it. And the only way to do that is to make sure that we keep bringing out the truth of cannabis, the truth about our history in cannabis, and how it will not only develop what we're building now, but what our families and future generations will be building their businesses on and their technologies to take us into a place that is really representative of all things that hemp and cannabis can bring to a community or this planet.
Yeah, and so we see currently, a lot of companies that are struggling, so a lot of the smaller businesses that are struggling because of what regulations put together. And even though, it's a lot of them are fighting to stay alive, what do you think a lot of these companies could do to, maintain what they've got going for them so far and, continue to be a force and scale as this industry grows?
Well, the truth of the matter right now is that small family farms are literally being pushed out or crushed by the enormous costs of being a competitive business, or even just a marginal business, even being able to just take care of their families and not really thinking so much outside of their community, but just being a part of their community. They're being pushed out in a way that they're not able to have space in the retail market. They're not able to do all of these things because the tax and regulation and all the requirements in order for even a 10,000 square foot grow are enormous. And the profit margins are being squeezed down so much because of the regulations are so monumental. I mean, they're just enormous. Moving into that, we have larger companies which are, in a sense, they're either, in a sense, taking advantage of the lack of challenges by smaller farms and really just pushing them out. Smaller farms really need to figure out how they can work with other businesses that are open to creating, co-packaged products. They, learn how to take their products, move them through another chain of operation, so they have a pathway to the market, and through solid distribution, through relationships, those smaller businesses can thrive and they can exist and they can continue to raise their communities in which they work and live. And we have that responsibility, no matter what size business that you have, is to remember that first and foremost, this is a community. They say we call it the cannabis community for a reason, because we all care about the existence of one another, not the fact that we're selling more than one another, but the fact that we are rising up together and building something that is changing this globe.
That's something that we like to take pride in ourselves in, as well as with WebJoint. We work with a lot of the smaller delivery services. Like I mentioned this to you earlier, these delivery services have always been on the smaller end of the supply chain. They've always been, the ones that aren't making as much revenue as the big, large dispensaries out there, the ones that are trying to dominate the market. And with what we're trying to do is work with some of the brands and bring people together in a network/family where together they can be that conglomerate and they can help people, grow on that level and scale. So what are some of the initiatives and what are some of the things that you're doing with her group that is helping, push that conversation forward and your initiatives forward?
Well, for us, we engage in as many small farms as we can, from the acquisition of biomass to processing products, doing white labeling, doing distribution. We reach out to the community in any and every way that we can, as long as they're legal and their paperwork's in place. We can engage at a level that is personal. That when I started this company with my partner, I said, brother, I don't know what we're going to be, but we should never be too big to think small, and to start and to keep thinking that the legacy of the opportunities that we have weren't created by us. They weren't even created by my father. The legacy of what we're all building is created on the legacy of the small farmers that grew in the mountains of Mendo, in the Southern California mountains of Fallbrook. From all over California, it's small farmers that we're all trying to emulate now at scale, and to eliminate them by creating these large scale facilities and trying to, in a sense, take over the space by being able to be in every single store. We need to be able to look back to these small farmers. They have the most beautiful plants, the most love that they put into their soil, into their plant, into their process, that are creating the flowers that we all want to have. And it's up to us to continue those relationships. And I'm so glad that your company is representing those folks at a level that a lot of companies haven't yet really grasped the importance of saving and honoring the legacy of California cannabis. And my hat's off to you, really.
Well, I'm glad to be working with gentlemen such as yourself and companies such as yours to keep that moving forward. And let's see where we get next year, the year after that, and just keep moving the conversation forward and bringing the industry together.
You're doing good work, brother.